where we're going to be going next. But today's episode, this one's kind of heavy. So it's about Charlie Kirk. Obviously, this has been all over the news, and absolutely horrible that it ever happened in the first place because it never should have happened or been allowed to happen. But again, we're going to talk about Charlie Kirk, the free speech hypocrisy that's been touted as out of him, the political violence that's been coming around a lot more lately, and the whole phenomenon that I want to name out loud that I want to call sarcastic terrorism. Not to be differentiated from stochastic terrorism, which I'll go over that too, but I'm not even sure if it can be named it, but sarcastic terrorism. And I want to ask you a question right from the start, right? When someone says something violent with a smirk or a wink or a laugh, does it make it any less dangerous? Or is it more dangerous? Just think about that for a second. So, first and foremost, Charlie Kirk, father, two little girls, wife, the American dream in terms of that sense, right? He was able to do something that the right was unable to do for the longest time, is he was able to actually put into words the things they wanted to say and not make it seem like you're a complete and utter asshole for doing it and thinking it. And for that, he is brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant for what he did, right? He gave them a voice that they could not even hope to dream of making themselves, right? And he also reached a ton of younger conservatives that were out there, right? So, in terms of that, what he did was a wonderful thing, being able to reach people that need to be reached and give a voice where people felt they did not have a voice. All right, I am not discounting that at all because he did do that, right? But I would also argue that Charlie Kirk loved to play the patriot, right? He would wave a flag, quote the Constitution like it's the menu at Denny's, and brand himself as the guy to defending free speech, right? But again, let's just break down a little bit of this because even though I am a leftist, right? I am a progressive human. I believe that everyone should have certain things and that the government should be working for people and not for billionaires but again, I feel like that's not something that is solely to the left. And I've made other episodes going over that saying, hey, I don't think this is a solely me thing or solely left thing or solely anything. I think across the political spectrum, it can be agreed that when you are the one footing the bill, you should get the cuts. When you're putting in your hard earned money to taxes all the time, you should be getting more of the cuts. You should be getting more of the benefit. It should not go only to the corporations who have had their taxes cut. And, there's the whole thing about the quote unquote golden age of America, and they want to go back to it, which is basically post World War II. But again, people seem to forget that was when corporate taxation was about like 78%. Not, was it 15% now? Or maybe they moved to 20? I don't even remember. It moves all around the place, but it's a lot lower than it used to be. But wealth disparity was not really a thing back then. I mean, it was like little things like here and there, like you're a top guy, and then your CEO is right about here, a little bit more, but not too much. Instead of like, top guy in the company, CEO up here. You know what I mean? So that doesn't have that. But again, let's get back on track. I do want to break that down a little bit. The whole branding himself as defending free speech, because the same Charlie Kirk who also said that college campuses should be bastions of free speech also called for professors to be fired for criticizing Trump. The same guy who also cries about cancel culture is more than happy to cancel someone who does not fall in line with his ideology. So that's not free speech advocacy. That's selective speech advocacy. Free speech for me, not for thee. And it's the oldest grift in the conservative playbook, play victim while wielding power. So the thing about that is there's also a bit of an Epstein tie-in that's kind of worth mentioning, and that's let's just talk about hypocrisy more broadly for a second here, because it's all part of the same ecosystem, right? Remember the Epstein files? Democrats, Republicans, elites across the board, no one should ever escape scrutiny there. All right. And I'll say that flat out. If there's a Democrat on the list, I want them behind bars. No excuses, no cover ups. But notice how the right always plays it differently, right? If it's a Democrat, string them up. It's a Republican, suddenly it's excuses or suddenly it's silence. The hypocrisy is poisonous. It really is. Because, and I think regardless of where you're on the political spectrum, this can be pretty much agreed to. If us as a general country, say 75% of the country think the same way across political spectrum, shouldn't that be the main holding point to it? Because, and I know what you're thinking, can't the majority be wrong? Yes, they can, but that's the beauty of it, because you can learn more and grow from that. But as it sits now, that's not the case at all, and that's been pretty obvious over and over and over again. So in terms of hypocrisy being poisonous, you can basically understand how it is, because I think we can all agree on one simple baseline, right? We do not want child sex predators in a position of power, period. No matter the party, no matter the platform. And if you say that clearly about one side, it should be literally across the board, because you can't say that clearly about one side. Like, Republicans are not on that same platform. Then patriotism isn't your value. Power is. It's really that simple. I think, again, everyone that I've talked to, regardless of their political affiliation, thinks that anyone who is on that Epstein list should not be in power, should be held to account for abusing children. Period. The end. And again, it's insanely hypocritical to say, well, as long as it's Democrats, yes, but if it's Republican, not really. Especially when the guy who's in charge is literally a 34 count convicted felon. So, regardless, but something that's kind of worth also tying into this whole thing is the idea of political violence, right? Violence is the double standard here. And it's a disconnect that goes a lot deeper when violence comes from the left. Property damage during protests, for instance, the right paints it as an existential threat to America. But when violence comes from the right, when it's some militia storming the Capitol or a Republican extremist opening fire, suddenly it's crickets, or, it's mental health, whatever it is, which they're also trying to kill mental health as many ways they possibly can. So the hypocrisy is stacked on other hypocrisy. And Charlie Kirk is just one of the loudest so-called patriots in the room that embodies that hypocrisy. So, getting into the elephant in the room, we definitely need to talk about the shooting, right? So let's just be clear. It never should have happened. It's a tragedy, a horror, and a human life lost. And regardless of your political affiliation, that should never be the case. People can hold you to account. You could be arrested for crimes and things of that nature. But if you have not done it, if you have not done that, it's rhetoric. It's dangerous rhetoric, and I'll go over that in a minute. But the bottom line of it is, it's rhetoric, and rhetoric alone should not be the reason to do what happened. So the reason I bring this up is, in the immediate aftermath, before facts were even on the table, the right had their story already. They pointed fingers on the left. They claimed that radical rhetoric was to blame. Radical left rhetoric, to be specific, was to blame, claiming that it had to be someone from Antifa or some radical progressive or some left-wing agitator, right? I went to bed on Wednesday night, literally because of everyone from the president to everyone on Fox News. I literally went to bed thinking that, did I do something wrong here? Like, I didn't understand it. I was literally woke up in a cold sweat. I checked all my doors and all that stuff, because I have had death threats from this own, from people responding to my podcast here. So that's not, universal. I have 3 kids. I have a wife, and for all I know, it could happen to me anytime. But I'm not nearly as loud as Charlie Kirk here. So, at least I don't think I am. At least not that I can say I'm not. But the bottom line was, when the facts came out, the shooter, who was a white cisgendered male Republican and a man radicalized not by progressive rhetoric but by the very conservative echo chamber that points fingers in the first place, right? And yet, Jesse Waters, voices at the White House, conservative influencers, they didn't miss a single beat. They kept calling for war against the radical left, not debate, not dialogue, war, right? War. And that's been proven also coming out of Trump's own shit. So, and they say this knowing full well that they had no evidence that the left was responsible. So that's not just bad faith politics, it's incitement by proxy. And that's handing out matches in a country that's already doused in gasoline and more divided than ever. So just a couple of ideas here is don't forget that Trump once called immigrants animals, right? He referred to political opponents as vermin. He told crowds to knock the crap out of protesters and that he'd cover their legal fees, right? This is something that he has done on camera. It's not like, knows behind. No, it was freaking in person. So stop acting like it did not happen, because it blatantly did. So Republicans constantly go out, they call Democrats Marxists, groomers, pedophiles, labels designed not to debate, but to dehumanize. That's their entire point. Because once you label someone as a pedophile, compromise isn't possible, right? Violence becomes justified. And here's the kicker. When Democrats call that out, when they hold up a mirror and say this rhetoric is dangerous, Republicans scream that it's inflammatory. And that pointing out that the knife is somehow worse than the one swinging it, right? And it's kind of funny how you piss off people just because you hold up a mirror to them, right? Like, I don't get pissed off at a bunch of people that reach out to me. I'll correct them and be like, that's not really what I said, but okay. We could talk about this, especially on my YouTube channel, my YouTube shorts. But constantly people are like, that is wrong. I'm like, facts tell you to say otherwise. I'm confused. So it's things that really pissed me off, frankly, when it came to this whole situation, because at the end of the day, Tyler Robinson, the person who shot and killed Charlie Kirk, he was not black, he was not Muslim, he was not Latino, he is not trans, he was not an immigrant, he's not ISIS, he's not Democrat, he's not Antifa, he's not the radical leftist that everyone wanted to do. He was just a homegrown, straight white male from a conservative family, Mormon family, Republican Mormon family, right? Who was obsessed with guns and who wore a Trump costume for Halloween and was a regular poster on right-wing forums. How does that say left to literally anybody? And again, something that is very obvious is if you actually talk to someone on the left, actually talk, not just listen to their videos or podcasts or anything like that, or if you get out of the Fox media ecosystem, OAN, all these ecosystems, and just talk to someone, and someone who does this amazingly is actually Bernie Sanders, right? He's not even on the left technically. He's independent, but he caucuses with Democrats. But he has a way of just talking to people that really makes you understand that there's a lot of talk of common sense shit when it comes to policies, right? It's pretty common sense that we shouldn't have a convicted felon in the White House. I think that's pretty common sense. That's what you guys said in 2016, especially if on the MAGA side. But it's just, there's so much issues. And again, you're talking about, in the case of Charlie Kirk here, you're talking about a guy who literally said that gay people should be stoned to death. Right? That's the thing. He said that normal people get scared when they see a black pilot flying a plane. He said that Taylor Swift should reject feminism and submit to her husband. Right? That no one should be able to retire. He said that leftists should not be able to move to red states. He said that British colonialism was made the world decent. He said the guy who assaulted the Pelosi should be bailed out. He said that religious freedom should be terminated. He said that black politicians stole white people's spots, right? These are things that he has said. He said that MLK Jr. was an awful person. That's an actual quote. An awful person. He said that. That's not changing something else. And again, these things, great replacement theory is reality. That was another thing that he said. He said hydroxychloroquine cures COVID. He said that vaccine requirements are a medical apartheid. You know, that gun deaths are acceptable in order to have a Second Amendment. That a woman's natural place is under her husband's control. That parents should prevent their daughters from taking birth control. That George Floyd had it coming, that January 6th protesters didn't, that the 1964 Civil Rights Act was a huge mistake. Again, his direct quote. Encouraged parents to protest mask mandates. He thought that Mondani winning New York is a travesty because Muslims did 9/11 and Muslims only come to America to destabilize Western civilization, and that Palestine doesn't exist, and those who support it are like the KKK. Again, you can take any one of those, and there's no possible context you can take that and say, well, actually, he didn't mean that. No, there's no possible way to spin that thing that he said. And again, a massive list of things here. And here's where I want to pause and just put the name to what I want to call this. So first off, stochastic terrorism, right? If you don't know what stochastic terrorism is, it's the use of mass media to provoke random acts of ideologically motivated violence that are statistically probable but individually unpredictable, right? It's basically built in, well, I didn't tell him to do that. Yeah, because you're not talking to exactly one person. You're saying, you, John, do this and kill that person. Like, that's not what's happening with stochastic terrorism. It's the way it's put out. But again, I'm putting it out there as sarcastic terrorism. So sarcastic terrorism is when political ideologues use sarcasm, irony, and humor as a smokescreen for violent ideas. And I've been seeing this a lot lately. So I really feel like I need to put some kind of a name to it. It may already exist, actually. I didn't actually look. But it's the, when someone says, maybe we should shoot shoplifters. Just kidding. Or maybe political enemies should be executed. Lighten up, Snowflake. It's just a joke. Or I could tell that was a cry or a chuckle happening upstairs. Seems like it was a chuckle. But yeah, so it's basically how it works, right? You step one, you put an idea in joking form, right? Step two, you repeat it a bunch of times to make it normalized. Step three is you keep the escape hatch for plausible deniability. I never told anyone to actually do it. Step four is statistically someone unstable, angry, armed will take it seriously. And when they do, step five, shrug and laughed. Who could have predicted, right? That's literally what stochastic terrorism is on top of that. So it's the same kind of rhetoric idea. And the idea behind that is if you stay an idea out there in the open enough, and you have enough reach. So, for instance, I say this because Charlie Kirk had, millions of viewers to him. Fox News has millions of viewers. CNN has millions of viewers, right? So when you do it to these broad swaths of people, if you put something out there that has any kind of, if you're trying to promote some kind of random act of violence in an ideological way, it's going to statistically reach somebody or group of people within there. And again, the whole plausible deniability part of it is you're not saying specifically, I want Proud Boys to go do this. You're not doing that. But again, if you just generalize it enough, it can pull individuals or groups of people that have seen that as a wake-up call for them to do something. And this happens across the political spectrum, right? It happens a lot more on the right, but it does happen on the left. It happens in basically every single part of that spectrum. So that needs to be, frankly, acknowledged and should not happen. Like there should be a basic standard here where you do not say something that causes problems for other people because you dehumanize them or put a target on their back. All right. When I talk about anybody here, it's not to put a target on their back, it's to hold a mirror up to what they are doing and say there's a better way and then give that better way. That's how I work, right? That is how I work. If you've listened to any of my stuff, that is how I work. I talk about the problems that are coming out of the administration right now, and I say, here's how you can do better. Here's how you can make a difference. Here's how you can change something. Never have I advocated violence and never will I advocate violence. I am a gun owner myself, right? I am not going to advocate anyone else to go shoot somebody. I don't watch stuff to make myself go shoot somebody. That's why I unplug from things on occasion here because when I start to feel myself going down that rabbit hole of whatever the hell my particular algorithm is trying to tell me, show me, or anything of that nature, I step away because I'm like, this isn't going to work. So I encourage people to do the same. Or if you're going to do things, if you're going to get news or anything from it, I suggest getting one of those apps. They make apps that literally give you the spin, right, of anything that's going out there. So you look at, for instance, there's an article, I believe it came out last year, and it was about how Muslims were the statistically overtook, or was it overtake, or just can't even? I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something to the degree of Muslims have overtaken Christianity in the world on statistics, and a quarter of the people that were polled just said no affiliation whatsoever. So they take basically that data, and then you can look at something that's a center, something that's on the center, something that's on the right, and something that's on the left, and they can each one will spin it a different way to make it seem like something's worse. So like something on the left would say like fastest growing Muslim religion as now surpassed Christianity. With a quarter of the people not doing it. The middle would just say, hey, this happened. This information came out. Take with it what you will. And then the right will claim it as Christianity is dying. That they use different language to elicit different reactions. The right is fantastic on eliciting anger, right? And I'm going to go over that in a second as well because it's something that's worth mentioning. But there are ways you can get around that and see how different people spin the same information. And I think that's very helpful. It's something that I do on a normal basis because I know where I sit on things. I know that other people are not going to agree with me on that because we're different people. That's okay. We're supposed to be able to have, respective discourse with each other and come to some kind of agreement where we do, because we have more in common than we don't. I think that's more obvious by the more people that actually talk to me and allow me to talk to them and bring them on the show and do things of that nature. So that is obvious. And again, the reason I feel like this needs to be talked about is because it's one of the reasons why this kind of terrorism is so insidious, because it's not one order to one person. It's thousands of little nudges to millions of people. And when violence inevitably erupts, because it statistically will, the speaker can walk away clean, right? And yet it shatters lives, destroys families. And that's where empathy comes in, right? So empathy, let me just be blunt, all right? I disagree with basically everything that Charlie Kirk ever said, right? I think his politics are corrosive. I think his rhetoric is dangerous. But when shots ring out and another man, a father, a husband, was dragged into the crosshairs, that is a tragedy. I feel horrible for his wife and his two little girls that now do not have a husband and father. Like, that sucks. I can't imagine doing that to my own family. So somehow, and this is something I don't understand, is empathy itself has been politicized, right? On the right, empathy is weakness, compassion is softness, and grief is for snowflakes. But empathy isn't weakness, all right? Empathy is strength. Empathy is the thing that lets us say, even if I hate your politics, I do not want you dead. Right? If you're broken down the side of the road, I'm still gonna pull over and see if I can help you. That doesn't There's a basic humanity that's there that a lot of times seems to get lost, and sometimes on the left too. Like that, the fact that I have seen some people on the left literally celebrating Charlie Kirk's death, that is despicable and should never ever happen, right? Because that makes you the same monster that they are. Don't be a monster. Anybody. Be a human being. See if there's good in people, even if they don't look like you, even if they don't sound like you, even if they don't have your beliefs. Good still exists there. We have more alike than we do differently. So if we can't hold on to that, then we've already lost. Because without empathy, we're just sharpening knives and waiting our turn. So let's just be plain, right? Stochastic terrorism, and my apparent brand of it, sarcastic terrorism, is a pipeline from a smirk to a coffin. It's a joke with a mask, a shrug with a shield, but the outcome is the same. Blood is on the streets, democracy is weaker, humanity gets diminished. Now, I did want to also pivot for a quick second because there's something else I really can't shake. And that's that MAGA is still so angry. Why are they so angry? Their guy is back in office. They've got the White House, Congress, the courts are tilted in their favor. If winning was supposed to be their fix for rage, shouldn't they be celebrating at this point? Shouldn't the air be lighter? But it isn't, right? The rage is worse, louder, and more desperate. Why? And I've seen a couple of videos on this actually, and my wife's actually sent me one too. And the theory is that it's extinction level panic. I think that they know deep down that demographically, culturally, politically, their time is running out. That America that they long for, the one that where straight white conservative Christians run the show, is slipping away. That younger generations are more diverse, more progressive, less religious, and less interested in culture wars. And when you know you're losing the game, every short-term win feels hollow. So you can hold the seat, but if you can't hold the future, that could be a problem, right? And I think that's what I personally think that's why MAGA is still so mad today, because rage is literally all they have left. If they don't have something to be mad at, what am I doing here? Because then you start to talk to people and you realize, hey, we're actually pretty similar. You know, we may have a disagreement on where money goes when you pay your taxes or how much taxes to pay and things of that nature, but all in all, we're pretty damn similar. You know, just again, you have to look at their obsession with banning books, attacking teachers, policing pronouns of all things. And it's not just about governance, it's about control, and it's about trying to seize the culture in amber so that they know the future won't look like the past, which was a progressive move. You know, we've moved up to this point, and now this is the first time we've actually had rights taken away, piece after piece after piece after piece. That's going to turn around. It has to, because that's just how things work. Like the stock market, yeah, you have ups and downs and stuff, but eventually it is tilting up. It is getting better, not worse. So instead of evolving, they're doubling down. They're getting angrier. They're lashing out. And because rage is their identity, peace feels like extinction. Now, before I wrap up here, I did want to just bring something home here. You know, I've been away for a bit, right? Almost a month, and life happens, grief, family, burnout, politics. Sometimes you just need to take a step back. And here's the thing, the signal never really dies, right? People still listen, people still watch, they'll rewatch older episodes, they're just getting introduced and they'll start through it. And I had someone in my comments actually recently on my YouTube say that he actually, I assume it's a he, I apologize, he didn't actually say if it was a he or she, but I assumed it was a he from how they spoke. But so they went through basically about 50% of my content, And I don't know if they deep watched or if they just sort of skimmed through and just sort of like looked at the titles, but one way or another, that's something. You are engaging in what we are supposed to do as a nation, which is a beautiful thing. And I love you. Thank you so much for that. Because even though I know you do not agree with me and what I've said, I still appreciate you taking the time to look at my stuff, to get a potential different perspective. I think that's good and important to do. And what I want to know from you and from my listeners and my community is, where should we go next? All right. What topics do you want me to dig into? Because I've done everything from cars, family, and politics. Politics has kind of taken over a good chunk, but I want to do an episode on BMW iX3, which just came out, which is, oh my God, I've been knowing this is coming, but like some of the details that have come out since I left BMW are so much better than I expected. I'm just like, hoo. It makes me tingle with happiness. But again, what topics do you want me to dig into? You know, what blind spots need to be shined light, right? Because the show isn't about me. It's about us. It's about truth. It's about refusing to let sarcasm and violence define our politics, and remembering, you know, that empathy isn't weakness, and it's the strongest signal that we've got as humanity. So let me know where you want to go with this. Let me see where you're sitting. Leave it in the show comments if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you're seeing this as my YouTube live thing, let me know. Let me know on that. I apologize, I don't have the YouTube live comments on the side, but I appreciate you coming out. And for anyone who's watching, if you stayed this long, welcome. Like, subscribe, share, do all that jazz. And this has been the Beard Signal. I'm JP Dunphy. Stay loud, stay sharp, stay human, and until next time.